In this video, I'll be talking about the Kings of War Champions rulebook. Is it any good? And is the game any good? Kings of War Champions came out earlier this year, and as the time of recording, 2025. Now, there has been quite a few boxes come out since then, or as they're called, companies. This contains a champion, which is kind of like the leader, either one big unit or one biggish model, sort of like a large cavalry or chariot size model, or 3 large infantry, unless it's ogres, and 2 lots of 10 to be 2 different units, or if it's ogres it'd be 2 lots of 3 with a chariot, as it is. Each company also contains the stat cards and the order card for each of the units. So usually each faction will have 5 cards in total, 4 for each unit, and then the order card, unless you're halflings, which the halfling one contains 6 because there are 5 units, and that's mainly because of what's on the sprues really, but they've made it work so it's more unique to its own thing. But we're on about this, and it's not that big. I mean, how many pages are we talking? 62, so it's more like 64 to 63, 64. Yeah, it's more like 64 pages really, which, I mean, it's not a bad book in its own right, but the one thing that I wish that had been included with this, like I've said on one of my previous videos, is that I wish there was a basic example company that you could put together. Yes, it would be generic, and it really wouldn't be much good really, but it would be just there to just show you how it works, and just to give people a flavour of how to play the game if they're not inclined to either buy a company or 2 companies, or buy the 2-player starter set. Which I've got to stop saying that, because it's not a 2-player starter set, it's just a 2-player set, because in Champions you don't do points. It's just basically each box is what you get, end of, nothing more, nothing less, and that's all you're playing with. It might expand further down the line, but for now that's how it works. To start with, I'll go over the various tokens you get, because with the rulebook you get 2 sheets of tokens. It does include the 3 of these, which are to mark out the obstacles or small pieces of terrain, and it's double-sided, one for more like grassy area, one for like snowy area. You can get proper terrain bits to mark these out, but I'd use these as well, because you put the hedgerow or a wall or a fence down, and say a unit goes on it, it's going to be hard when there's actual physical piece down, so you take the piece off and you could leave this on, so it's still marked in the same place. You also get 2 of these, again snowy and grassy. This is where you put rocks or stones so it's impassable, and again if the unit's close by or whatnot you could take them off, but units aren't meant to go on here, but it's a good marking indicator. And this is for forests, indicated by trees. Now they do show trees, or you could make your own or get your own. Again, similar thing, take the trees off if a unit goes into it. Just shows that a unit's in a forest, and, well, called wood in the rulebook, but forest wood. You get the drift. And just move the trees around, so you've still got a marker for it, but you don't have to leave them on the terrain piece, unlike some companies. You also get this little measuring device that Mantic do with some of the games. Armada's a good example of including one of these. It goes up to 6 inch. It might not say 6 inch, but 6 inch is here. Majority of the units in the game have a movement of between 4 and 6, so if they're going at the double, then it'll just be basically double this, which, yes, it'd be better using a tape measure, but for small movements this is pretty good. Next we have this piece that is for arcs. The reason why it's got 45 degrees on it. So if I just bring Cuthbert the dice holder out, you put it along one edge to show where 45 degrees is, and that's basically the line of sight from the front of the unit. So can they see an enemy for shooting or charging purposes? If they're within either line, then they can. If not, then they can't. This next little doohickey is one of the best little tokens included in a rules book, or any set actually. What it does is you put it next to a unit, in which case Cuthbert the dice holder, and then you can move the model, and if you made a mistake or you've changed your mind, you could put the unit back. This is fantastic, and frankly you can do it on any corner. It just works. And I mean, if you move the unit and you're going to make a turn like that, you can put it there, and then, oh no, I didn't want to do that. And then if you want to make another turn, it's like that, and then, oh no, I didn't want to do that, you can put it back, sort of thing. It's a fantastic thing, and it's tiny, and it's still useful. You get a load of these different tokens. These ones are double-sided to be both red and blue. These are just yellow on either side. These are more generic objective tokens for everyone to take. These are more for the owner. So if the attacker is red, then that would be usually on their side. If, say, the defender is blue, that would usually be on their side. Simple enough. And some objectives will show it on the map which colours you want to have, and depending on where they are, they can be worth more points. Next we have these things, which I'm pretty sure are for scoring victory points. Now, I've also used them for marking out certain effects such as frozen and the like. Reason being is that they don't have the numbers on the other side, which I don't understand why. Surely it makes sense to have the number on either side, because sometimes you might be searching for the various victory point number, and yeah, they are for victory points, as it does say VPs at the bottom there. So that's 3 V points, and it goes from 1, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 5, and there's a 10. So there's quite a few to make up the points you need. It also has a load of wound counters, so you don't have to use a load of D20s if you don't want, and I'd argue you don't need to for champions, because the nerve values range from 12 to 15, so realistically you won't need a D20 to mark out nerve. There is the very, very occasional time where you might, but for the most part you won't. These range from 1... no, they don't range. It goes from 1, 3, 5 and 10, so you've got enough numbers to make up the wounds units will take. And finally there are the order tokens. Now, it's a little bit unclear on the rulebook how many you get of each one, but on the token sheet there'll just be one of each, so that's all you'll get. You only get to do one of each order a turn, and they only have the letters on one side, and on the other they are like that. And the reason being they're like that is because you put them face down when you come to apply them to the units. This is so that if your opponent looks at your orders card, they won't know which orders you are using, although for some orders and some factions it's kind of obvious for the first few turns, because chances are there are some orders you won't use. And there's a secondary use for them. You can, if you don't apply them to units, you can use them to reroll a single dice for nerve tests. Although if a unit has something such as inspiring, that will overrule re-rolling the nerve test for, well, re-rolling the dice when using these. Going to the rulebook itself, it's quite well laid out with a big double page photo of 4 different factions dueling it out. We've got the Ogres, we've got the Basilians, we've got the Abyssals over here, and we've got the Northern Alliance. It also shows you what you need to get started. The mat that you need to play it, unless you mark a area out, is a bit weird in its size, because it is 42 inch by 24 inch. Now this is weird for most games because you don't really have them that size usually, but for a game of Champions it works, I would argue, perfectly. I'd also argue it works pretty well for some of the other games Mantic are doing or have done, depending on what gets released, such as Epic Warpath, which at the time of this video's recording will be out or coming out pretty soonish to those who didn't back the Kickstarter. Next we have the, well, it says multi-basing, but it's basically examples of some of the units that are in the first year of Champions. And there is the Trident Realm, there's the Abyssals over yonder, there's the Night Stalkers, there's the Northern Alliance. So it doesn't show that many, but you'll see how many there is in a moment. Then it goes into the characteristics, the unit stat cards, special rules. It doesn't say what special rules there is because it will say on the unit card what special rules do what. And then it goes into facings, interacting with other units, rounds and turns, and some fairly nice artwork of a ogre boomer, and I think it's an boomer sergeant, considering he's got a little pistol or flare gun thing, and some goblins. What they could do for an idea for a new company is some goblins, or red goblins as they would be, with a boomer sergeant leading them, which, based on this artwork, would be very nice indeed. Yeah, before this, sorry, it also goes into the Champions phase, which is the first thing that you do at the start of each turn, before the actual player's turn. And then it goes into the movement phase, and what you can do, and the different facings and flanks and rear charges. And some of the things in here are kind of preludes to what Kings of War 4th edition is doing. Not everything, so you can't take everything that happens in Champions and go to Kings of War 4th, but there are some things that you could see what's going off there here, and it's kind of happening there. For example, you can only have so many units charging each facing. In Champions you can only have 2. In 4th edition, sorry, in Champions you can only have 1. In 4th you can only have 2. And then it goes on to multiple charges. Again, some nice artwork here of a halfling. I can't remember the name, but it's a halfling on a big dog mount, firing at some Night Stalkers. And then it goes into terrain and how terrain works. Again, with some nice photos and artwork, especially this one. This is one of the best ones in the book, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. Kings of War, Mantic do not pay their artists for Kings of War enough, because they have always been fantastic for 3rd edition right through it, and I'd count this as part of 3rd edition as well. One thing in the terrain section that I'd have liked to have seen is what images of the terrain themselves, what the tokens and terrain pieces actually look like, so it's not that hard to understand. For people who have played war games for a fair bit, it's not really that hard, and there are terrain tokens that'd give you a good idea. But for some people, I think it'd be better to have some pictures just for some clear understanding. And then goes on to the range phase. Then we go on to the combat phase. And it does give, and this is a nice picture here. This gives an example, because if you don't kill a unit in close combat, it gets pushed back 2 inch. But what if you get charged on multiple facings? Then you go 2 inch away from both units. So 2 inch that way, and then 2 inch that way, or 2 inch that way, then 2 inch that way. And I like that. I think it's something that could have easily not been there, and people would have had a lot of questions on it. But yeah, this is a really good one. Then it goes on to Nerve. This picture, it feels similar to what they do for some of the Dead Zone slash Firefight artwork, in that it kind of looks like they've taken the model, and in this case they haven't, and then kind of made it look painted. I don't know if it's just the colours they've used, perhaps, but I don't know. Maybe it's perhaps the coloration, but it's not my favourite, and I don't really know why, because it's a pretty good art piece, or it might be just how the arms are on the central character, because it's a bit weird, to be honest, how the arms are. But it's not that it's not technically good. It's just, I think it's more personal preference of not liking it is all, and that's probably why it stands out to me a bit more than it probably should. Then goes on to playing a game, and then the different scenarios. There are there 6 included? There are 6, and a lot of them are based on objectives, whereas there's 1 or 2 that's based on running to your opponent's side of the board or getting different zones of the map. It then goes on to background. Now, this is a nice piece of artwork. This was from the newest 2-player Kings of War box, which was Trident Realms and Forces of the Abyss, which, as opposing forces go, is not bad. Next, we have the a map of some part of Panathor, which is the Kings of War world. Comments below of where this is exactly. It says Northern Panathor here, but where exactly, I don't know. It's got a lot of landmarks noted out, and when it comes to maps, I usually like the ones Mantic do for King's War, and this one's not too bad, but the one that a lot of people have seen from the King's War rulebook and other places is, I think, a fair bit better. So then we go on to just a bit of background and a bit of nice artwork here from the Shires, where the halflings are, and then a bit about the Forces of Good, and then I don't think this was taken from the Armada rulebook, but it could be. It could have been, and it's a nice enough bit of artwork. It then goes into the neutral forces, and this is a piece that have been used to amplify the neutral forces for a long time. This was from 2nd edition. It still works, don't get me wrong, but this is a 2nd edition piece of artwork, and the reason why they keep using it is for the few neutral forces is it works so well. We then go on to the Forces of Evil, should I say, and I suppose a slight criticism is the Forces of Evil and the Forces of Good don't really get an image of the various armies coming together to fight, or 1 or 2 different factions looking like they're ready to scrap. The one for the Forces of Evil in particular is, I mean, it looks very treacherous. It looks, you know, magma in evil and whatnot, but and it could have had a bit more to it. I think it could have had a bit more, and then a bit of the Lands of Ice, which is Northern Lights, and then it's the pictures of each of the champions of this first year. So there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 in total. So we've got the Twilight Kin one. Don't ask me to pronounce some of the names. You've not got any chance. We've got the Night Stalker one, which the model is quite big for the Game of Champions. We've got the Halfling one. Yeah, she's riding a mechanical steamrollery thing. We've got the Abyssal one. We've got the yeah, the Abyssal one, the Forces of the Abyss. We've got the Basilian one. We have the Northern Alliance one with Mechanical Bird. We have the Ogre one. And, yeah, Mantic, that's not a crocodile. That's a full-on crocodile. We have the Goblin one, which has got a dwarf Juggernaut armour. I think it's Juggernaut armour. And the cannon's been repurposed into a morph-up launcher. And then we've got the Trident Realm one. One that a lot of people want, and the model is quite fantastic, so who can blame them? So next we have a bit of background on the Basilians, a bit about the character, and a nice arty portrait of them. Same for all of them, really. In fact, the bit about the character is a bit of a story in most cases about what happened to them or what they're doing and so on. And they're all of them pretty good. The Halfling one and the Night Stalkers one is a bit different. The Halfling one is in the form of a diary, trying to make this contraption work, which, well, they clearly have done. Next one is, yeah, see, the Night Stalker one. This is in the form because Night Stalkers generally don't talk like normal people, but I'm sure there's a few. This is in the form of someone's encounter with the Void Talon, which, yeah, it's a bird. Is it a bird? It's oh, it's all wrong. And then we have the Northern Lights one, the Ogre one, and then the Trident Realm one, the Twilight Kin one, and that's basically it. And then on the back it's got some advertisements for some novels, Dungeon Saga and King's War proper, and then some shaded out artwork of the 2-player starter set, which I wish was the cover of this rulebook. And then I think on the other side, yeah, it's got the other end on the front inside cover. I wish that was the rulebook cover instead of this, which it's a nice piece, but you don't see any goblin wizards or goblins with two-handed weapons in a King's War Champions yet. You might do at some point, and here's hoping, but at the minute, no. Champions itself is a game that, on the face of it, you might think, well, I don't do any points building, I don't see what the stats are, and it's just basically not very much. But that's the thing, really. It's not designed to be very much. It's designed to be quick, it's designed to be easy, it's designed to be over in maybe a couple of hours at most, and I'd argue an hour is plenty of time to play Champions. It's probably 2 hours if you haven't played before, but an hour's plenty of time. And here's the thing. All the factions have their own specialisation, and they all do their own thing pretty well. The Basilians, for example, are all about being offensive when necessary and defensive when necessary. They've basically got a good all-rounder system going on, and they are pretty good at it. They're not something that has something that excels in anything per se, but they have a bit of everything, and what they do works for them. The Northern Lights, on the other hand, has a bit of harassment shooting and units that can be buffed defensively and take units' attacks away a little bit. The Night Stalkers, while not so much offensive as the sense of they can't decrease defense when they're wounding, they have got a lot of anti-shooting defenses, and they've got some good mobility options. Likewise, the Trident Realms have got some good mobility options. In fact, they, I'd argue, have got the best mobility options in Champions so far, and they've got some skills to make enemies less accurate in close combat, and to slow them down a little bit. The halflings, just to give you another example, yes, they've got more units, but they have to be a bit more close-knit to get the effects off. They've also got some pretty decent shooting, and while their nerves are a little bit low to begin with, when they're all close together, it's going to rank up. The only faction, unfortunately, and I'm not alone in thinking this I think is the majority thinking, the Forces of the Abyss is not great. In fact, I would argue the Ogre Company is what the Forces of the Abyss should have been. The reason being is that they have plenty of crushing strength, but they've got no shooting. Their nerve isn't that great. Their defensive capabilities near enough non-existent. They've got plenty of offensive options, and they've got no shooting or way to keep themselves going. They have to get in there quick, and well, they've got a bit of speed, but it's just not enough. One thing to change this, I would do, is make the unit of 10 models, the lower abyssals, I can't remember what they're called exactly. Does it show it in the rule book at the start? No. I think it's the Summit Choir, I think it's called. They're a close combat unit, and yes, they've got a crushing strength, though they're easier to wound your opponent. But I would instead make them a range unit. They would, I'd imagine, be a very manoeuvrable and very good, accurate shooting unit. They'd be really soft and really pathetic when they get in close combat, but you've got the other units that can help out with that. Another thing that people might look at and think it's not worth it is the price of the companies. 40 quid might seem a bit much on face value. However, there are some things that you might not be thinking about. The 2 infantry units are essentially a box of 20, and yes, there are some mixed units like the Trident Realms is 10 Naiads, 10 River Guard, but they are essentially a box of 40 models, and a box of 40 models are between 25 and 27 quid, and then the big model is either 25 quid for the Night Stalkers and the Forces of Abyss, because it's a large infantry unit. Well, it's actually half that, so it's about £12.50 for that, because it's half what you get in the box, 3 models rather than 6. Or it's a big model that is usually in a unit of 3, so things that are chariot sized on its own, part of a unit of 3. The Trident Realm one is 1 Dam Buster, which is unit in a unit of 3. These usually are about 30 quid or 35 depending on which ones it is, so let's say 30, so you're looking at about a tenner, give or take, for each sprue, because usually the big model is usually on 1 sprue, as showed in one of the previous videos, and so let's say that's a tenner, so that's what, 35 quid. And then the champion model is really well detailed, all of them are, and what they're made from is something called master crafted. In some places it doesn't say resin, but they are resin for all intents and purposes. It's a different sort of resin. I can't remember exactly how it's made. They did say something at some point, but one of the beauties of it is it's not as brittle as resin, and you don't need to wash / undercoat it with varnish before painting. You can just undercoat it from the start. No need for washing. It's just basically put the paint on, there you go, sort of thing. It's really good, and I think Mantic are going to do this for models going forward. I think that's the case. Don't quote me on that. I might have heard that wrong. It might just... I think if I'm remembering correctly, it's a case of some stuff's going to be mastercrafted resin and they are going to do normal resin. It's just like a mix of the two depending on what it is they're using, sort of thing. And so going back to the price, so say 10 quid for a character, that's like 45 quid or 47 depending on what you get. So it's about 7 quid saving on what you're getting. So and really, once you've got your basics there, you could use them for say King's War or Ambush, which is still being a thing in 4th edition. And because champions are a kind of a unit in their own right, because apparently in 4th you're getting warlords and champions. Hopefully we'll be seeing the champions from this book in King's War proper. Hopefully, and you could possibly use them as different models now, which, you know, bigger base sizes, but let's see what happens. It is a good game. It's meant to be quick, and it does work. You might be sceptical, but once you've given it a go, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So, that's it for this video. Goodbye for now.